Before we begin, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you apologized, not for something you did wrong, but just for being there? For showing up, for taking space, for having a voice. Most people don't even realize how often they do it. It becomes second nature, a habit so deeply wired into our day-to-day that we don't question it, we just accept it. But what if I told you that every unnecessary apology chips away at your confidence? That it quietly tells the world, "Don't worry, I won't be a problem." And that over time, you start believing it? Today, we're starting with something subtle but powerful. A habit that seems harmless on the outside, but deeply affects how others see you, and how you see yourself. If you've ever said, "sorry," when you didn't need to, this is your wake-up call. It's time to stop apologizing for who you are. Let's dive into part 1. Stop apologizing for existing. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I'm sorry," for something that didn't even require an apology? Like being 2 minutes late because traffic was insane, and you walk in saying, "Sorry, I'm late," or worse, someone bumps into you, and you automatically blurt out, "Oh, sorry." Pause for a second. What exactly are you sorry for? For taking up space? For existing? This episode starts right here. In that subtle moment where respect quietly slips away, not because others devalue us, but because we undervalue ourselves. Today, I want to talk about a habit that's costing you more than you think. A habit that's small on the surface but deeply damaging underneath. The compulsive, unnecessary, and reflexive, "I'm sorry." Let's call it out. Saying sorry all the time doesn't make you polite. It makes you invisible. It tells the world, "I assume I'm wrong, I assume you're right, and I'm just trying to avoid conflict by shrinking myself." It's like walking into every room already defeated. But here's the thing. You weren't born to apologize for your presence. You were born to stand in it. I used to be someone who apologized for everything. For speaking up, for being interrupted, for asking a question. I thought I was being considerate, humble, socially graceful. But what I was really doing was giving people permission to overlook me. I remember being in a meeting where I was interrupted mid-sentence, and without thinking, I said, "Oh, sorry, go ahead," and right there, I handed my power away. That was the moment I knew something had to change. I started watching myself, tracking every unnecessary sorry like a bad habit. Before I spoke, I asked, "Am I really at fault here? Or am I just trying to soften the space because I'm afraid of being too much?" And you know what I discovered? Most of the time, I wasn't apologizing for a mistake. I was apologizing for existing too confidently. And that's a hard truth. But it's a liberating one. Because when you see the pattern, you can finally break it. So here's the mindset shift. Respect doesn't come from self-deprecation. It comes from owning your space, your voice, your imperfections, and standing tall anyway. If you're constantly saying sorry, you're quietly asking for permission to be here. But you don't need permission. You need self-respect. Now let's get practical. What do you say instead? Instead of saying, "Sorry, I'm late," say, "Thank you for waiting." Instead of, "Sorry to bother you," say, "Do you have a moment?" Instead of, "Sorry, can I just add something?" try, "I'd like to add something." These aren't just language hacks. They're mindset shifts. You're moving from shrinking to showing up, from guilt to gratitude, from insecurity to quiet confidence. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you stop apologizing when it's truly needed. Owning your mistakes is powerful. But what we're talking about here isn't accountability. It's chronic self-erasure. It's the subtle way we tell others, "I'm probably wrong, and I don't want to inconvenience you by having a voice." And that has to stop. So the next time that familiar, "sorry," rises to your lips, take a breath. Ask yourself, do I genuinely need to apologize here? Or am I defaulting to smallness again? Because here's what I've learned. People can only respect you to the extent that you respect yourself. When you start showing up without constant apologies, people notice. You speak differently, you carry yourself differently, and suddenly, the room hears you, not just because you spoke louder, but because you finally spoke like someone who belongs there. And let me remind you, you do belong there. So drop the unnecessary sorries. Not because you need to be arrogant, but because you deserve to be heard, without asking for forgiveness just for being. You are not a mistake. You are not an inconvenience. And you are certainly not someone who needs to apologize for their presence. Speak like you believe that. Walk like you own that. And watch how everything around you starts to shift. Part 2. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're sacred. Let's get straight to it. If you're not setting boundaries, you're not being generous. You're being afraid. And I know that sounds harsh. But stay with me, because deep down, you already know it's true. How many times have you said yes when your soul was screaming no? How often have you silenced your needs to keep the peace, only to find that peace never really came? We've been taught that saying no is rude, that drawing the line is selfish, that prioritizing our time, our energy, our well-being somehow makes us cold, distant, unkind. But the truth? Boundaries aren't walls that push people away. They're doors. They show others how to approach you, how to value you, how to be in relationship with you respectfully. And if you don't build that door, people will barge in however they want. And spoiler alert, that almost always leads to resentment, not respect. I learned this the hard way. There was a time in my life where I said yes to everything, every last-minute favor, every social invite, every call for help even when my tank was on empty. I wore it like a badge of honor. I'm dependable. I'm easygoing. I'm a team player. But inside, I was exhausted, frustrated, quietly drowning in commitments that weren't mine to carry. It finally snapped when a close friend asked for help moving again. I had other plans. I had already rearranged my week once. And when I said, gently, I can't help this time, they hit me with the guilt trip. Wow, I thought I could count on you. And for a second, I almost folded. I almost let their disappointment override my limits. But then I realized, this wasn't about loyalty. This was about expectation. They weren't upset because I betrayed them. They were upset because I stopped betraying myself to meet their every need. That moment changed everything. You see, when people are used to you having no boundaries, your first no sounds like betrayal. But it's not. It's just unfamiliar. And they will adjust, if you hold the line. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. It means you finally care about yourself too. Here's something no one tells you. People won't always like your boundaries. Some will push back. Some will pout. Some will question you, guilt trip you, even call you selfish. But here's the secret. They're not mad because you set a boundary. They're mad because they benefited from you not having one. And you don't owe anyone your burnout. You don't owe anyone your breakdown just to be seen as a good person. So how do you start? Start small. You don't have to bulldoze your whole life in a day. Say no to a meeting you don't need to attend. Decline an invitation you're not excited about. Delay responding to messages that don't require your immediate energy. Let yourself breathe. Let your time become sacred again. And here's the hard part. Don't over-explain. You don't need a 5-paragraph essay to justify your no. I won't be able to make it. Full stop. Not, I really wish I could but, no. That's the old pattern. And the more you explain, the more you signal that your boundary is negotiable. Stick to it. Because every time you honor your limits, you're rewriting the story. You're telling the world, my time is valuable. My peace matters. I am not available for everything. And that's okay. Boundaries don't keep love out. They make room for real love. The kind that respects your rhythm. The kind that asks, not demands. The kind that listens when you say, not today. And here's something beautiful. The more you set boundaries, the more you attract people who honor them. Your circle gets smaller, but it gets stronger. You stop being everyone's emergency plan and start becoming your own protector. And that is where peace begins. So if you're tired of being exhausted, stretched thin, resentful beneath the smile, start here. Define what you need, communicate it clearly, and above all, hold the line. Because the only people who get mad when you set boundaries are the ones who benefited from you having none. And once they're gone, you'll find something even better: respect. Part 3. The pause that commands respect. You ever notice how the most powerful people in the room aren't the ones talking the most? They're the ones who know exactly when to say nothing, when to let the silence stretch, when to let their words hang in the air just long enough to make everyone stop and feel something shift. That's the real power, the pause. In a world that worships volume, speed, and noise, silence has become a superpower. But most of us fear it. We think if we're not constantly talking, we'll lose people. We imagine silence means uncertainty, weakness, hesitation. But what if I told you it's the exact opposite? What if I told you silence isn't what breaks your message, it's what gives it strength? You see, most of us have been conditioned to fill every second. Talk fast, prove your point, don't leave gaps. We rush our thoughts, we blur our meaning, we don't breathe, because deep down, we're afraid we won't be understood, afraid we won't be respected, afraid that if we pause, someone else will jump in and take the spotlight. So we talk too much, too fast, and too often. But the truth is, words without space become noise. And noise doesn't earn respect, it gets tuned out. But a pause, that commands attention. It creates weight. It lets people absorb what you're really saying. A pause is presence. It tells the room, I believe in what I just said enough to let it echo. I used to be terrified of silence. I thought it made me look unsure, like I didn't know what I was doing. I'd talk through everything: presentations, conversations, even first dates. I thought the more I spoke, the more value I added. But I was wrong. One day, during a big meeting, I pitched an idea I truly believed in. But I was nervous. I kept talking, rambling, adding details, just trying to fill the space. And you know what happened? I lost them. Not because my idea wasn't good, but because I never gave it time to breathe. Afterward, someone said, "You had me, and then you lost me. You didn't need all that extra. You just needed a pause." That was my wake-up call. From that day on, I practiced slowing down. I learned to deliver a point and stop, to let it land. At first, it felt awkward. My heart would race. My brain would scream, "Say more," but I resisted. And what I found was powerful. People leaned in. They stayed with me. They weren't just hearing my words, they were processing them. They were feeling them. And that's when I realized, communication isn't about filling air. It's about directing it, owning it, shaping the silence so that what you say carries weight. The pause isn't emptiness. It's energy. It's a deliberate choice to trust your message enough to let it stand on its own. It says, I don't need to oversell this. I know it matters. And that kind of stillness, that kind of presence, is what makes people listen. It shows confidence. It shows clarity. It shows control. Think about music. A song without silence is just noise. But a well-placed pause? That's rhythm. That's tension. That's emotion. Your speech is the same. When you pause, you turn sentences into statements. You give every word a frame. You give your audience room to respond, not just with words, but with thought, with feeling, with respect. And yes, silence can be uncomfortable. It will feel heavy at first. But trust me, that discomfort is where your power lives. That's the space where people actually listen. That's where your message settles into their minds. So here's what I want you to try. Next time you speak, whether it's in a meeting, a conversation, or even just telling someone how you feel, don't rush. Say what you mean, then stop, breathe, let the silence hold what you just said, resist the urge to fill it, and watch what happens. People respect what's delivered with intention. People trust what isn't rushed. And people remember what you give them time to feel. You don't need more words. You just need to believe in the ones you've already said. Let them breathe, let them land, and let the pause do what noise never could: make people listen. Part 4. Use humor without turning into a clown. Humor is one of the most powerful tools in communication. It disarms tension. It builds connection. It makes you relatable, memorable, and even magnetic when used well. But used poorly, it can do the opposite. It can make people stop taking you seriously. It can turn sharp confidence into sloppy distraction. And worst of all, it can cost you respect. The truth is, a lot of people confuse being funny with being foolish. They think if they keep the room laughing, they're winning. But laughter isn't always respect. Sometimes, it's just relief. Sometimes, it's discomfort dressed up as amusement. And sometimes, it's pity. Let's be honest, we've all seen that person. The one who tries too hard to be the life of the party. Always cracking jokes, always needing to be funny. And after a while, you stop laughing with them and start laughing at them. Not because they're bad people, but because they've made themselves the punchline over and over again. I used to be that person. I used humor as a mask. I wore it like armor. Anytime I felt insecure, anytime I feared being seen too clearly, I'd crack a joke, I'd lighten the moment, I'd make people laugh, hoping they wouldn't notice I was afraid. And for a while, it worked. People liked me, I was fun, but I wasn't respected, and deep down, I knew it. One day in a meeting, I made a joke about how my job was basically just making spreadsheets look pretty. Everyone laughed, but after the meeting, my manager pulled me aside and said, "You're too good at what you do to talk about yourself like that." That stopped me cold, because suddenly, I realized, I wasn't just entertaining the room, I was undermining myself in front of it. That was the day I started treating my humor like a tool, not a crutch. Because here's the thing, humor isn't bad. It's brilliant when it's intentional. It can show wit, emotional intelligence, timing, presence, but when it becomes a way to avoid vulnerability, or worse, a way to avoid being taken seriously, it turns into something cheap, something desperate, something that erodes the very respect you're hoping to earn. Especially self-deprecating humor. Don't get me wrong, being able to laugh at yourself is a sign of strength. But doing it all the time? That's not humility. That's insecurity with a punchline. If you're constantly making yourself the joke, don't be surprised when people start to believe it. Respect isn't earned through self-mockery. It's earned by showing people that yes, you can laugh, but you also know your worth. So here's a better way. Ask yourself, is this joke serving the moment? Or is it hijacking it? Am I using humor to build connection? Or to deflect discomfort? Is it helping me stand in my message? Or escape it? Because when you're thoughtful with humor, when you know when to drop it in, when to hold it back, when to use it to lift instead of hide, you gain control over how you're perceived. You become the kind of speaker, friend, or leader people remember not just because they laughed, but because they felt something real underneath the laughter. The best humor doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from being present, from being real, from reading the room and adding just enough levity to keep things human, not heavy. And when you do it right, it doesn't make people stop taking you seriously. It makes them pay even more attention when you finally stop joking. Because now, they trust your depth as much as your charm. So don't drop the humor. But don't let it replace the truth either. Use it to open the door. Then step through it with honesty, clarity, and conviction. That's how you speak in a way people admire. That's how you own the room without turning it into a stage. Because you're not here to be a clown. You're here to be real, sharp, thoughtful, and unforgettable, for all the right reasons. Part 5. Gossip doesn't make you interesting, it makes you replaceable. Let's talk about something uncomfortable, gossip. That juicy bit of drama about someone's personal life. The whispered opinion passed around like it's candy. The little stories we tell behind people's backs, sometimes with a smirk, sometimes with faux concern. It's easy, it's tempting, and let's be honest, it feels good in the moment. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Gossip doesn't make you influential. It doesn't make you respected. It makes you replaceable. Because the people laughing with you today are wondering when you'll turn on them tomorrow. We live in a culture that normalizes gossip as casual conversation. It's the glue in a lot of friend groups, office break rooms, even family dinners. And for a moment, it can feel like connection. It can feel like you're in on something. But dig a little deeper. And you'll realize what it really is: insecurity in disguise. A shortcut to feeling significant by making someone else feel small. I've been there. I've participated. I've said things I wish I could take back. At first, it felt harmless. A joke here, a story there. But one time, I made a snide comment about a colleague. Let's call him Matt, who was often late. I said something like, maybe his alarm clock is still on vacation. It got a laugh. It got repeated. But soon, that joke turned into a story. And the story turned into a narrative. People started saying Matt didn't care, that he was lazy. And then I found out the truth. He was caring for a sick parent every morning. Quietly, with zero complaints. And suddenly, my joke felt like a knife. Not just to him, but to the version of myself I had to face in the mirror. That was the moment I realized gossip isn't harmless. It's a slow erosion of integrity. Every time you repeat a rumor or add fuel to someone else's fire, you're not just speaking about them. You're telling the world something about you. That you can't be trusted. That your loyalty is conditional. That your empathy has a price, and it's paid in someone else's dignity. And here's the deeper issue. When gossip becomes your currency, you end up bankrupt where it matters most: credibility, trust, respect. People might laugh, they might nod, but they'll never fully open up to you. Because in the back of their minds, they're wondering, what does this person say about me when I'm not around? But here's the good news. Just as quickly as gossip destroys trust, silence builds it. The moment you choose not to participate, not to spread, not to smile at the shady comment, that's the moment people start to see you differently. Not as naive, not as cold, but as solid, grounded, safe. You become the person others want on their team. The one they trust with real conversations. The one they call when life gets messy, not because you'll broadcast it, but because you won't. And I won't lie, it's awkward at first. When someone leans in and says, "Did you hear about?" and you respond with, "I hope they're doing okay." It might feel like you're missing out, like you're standing on the outside of the drama circle. But over time, you'll realize that's exactly where you want to be. Because that circle, it always turns on itself. And when it does, the ones who refused to play are the only ones left with clean hands. So next time you're tempted to share a detail that wasn't yours to share, ask yourself, why? What are you trying to gain? Approval? Relevance? Belonging? And then ask yourself this, at what cost? Because respect doesn't come from knowing secrets. It comes from knowing when to stay silent. It comes from being the person others know they can trust, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. Let your silence be louder than someone else's drama. Let your loyalty be stronger than the urge to impress. And let your presence say what gossip never will. I am someone you can trust to protect what matters most: your dignity, your story, your humanity. Leave the gossip to the people who have nothing solid to stand on. You've got better things to build, like character, credibility, and peace. Part 6. Know when to stop talking, and watch the room shift. Let me give it to you straight, most people talk too much. We don't mean to. We're not trying to dominate the room or steamroll the conversation. But we do it anyway. Out of nervousness, out of habit, out of fear that silence will somehow make us disappear. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you talk, the more you dilute your impact. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing. We live in a world that rewards volume, that praises people who are always on, always ready with a clever remark, an opinion, an explanation. But when you peel back all the noise, what remains? Often, not much, just a blur of words that didn't land, didn't matter, didn't stick. Because here's what most people never learn: when you speak too long, you don't sound smarter, you sound unsure. And the more you explain, the more it sounds like you don't believe in what you said the first time. I remember pitching an idea to a client once. I had them hooked in the first 30 seconds. But I didn't stop. I kept going, adding layers, repeating myself, filling the space just in case they didn't get it. And by the end, I had lost them, not because the idea was bad, but because I didn't trust it to stand on its own. I smothered it, and in doing so, I smothered my own authority. That experience taught me something I've never forgotten. When you talk past the point, you talk past your power. Your words lose shape, your message loses force, and instead of leaving people thinking, you leave them tuning out. Silence, on the other hand, silence is golden. Silence is sharp. Silence gives your words a frame, and it gives your audience the dignity to process what you've said. Think about the best speeches you've ever heard, the most memorable conversations, the teachers, the leaders, the storytellers who moved you. Were they long-winded, or were they deliberate? Did they throw words at you endlessly? Or did they speak with precision, with pause, with restraint? Chances are, the moments that moved you most weren't the ones packed with the most noise. They were the ones that knew when to stop. Because knowing when to stop talking isn't just about communication. It's about confidence. It says, I don't need to say more to prove myself. What I've said is enough. It shows emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and mastery. And in a world full of voices competing for attention, that kind of control is magnetic. But I get it, it's hard. When you speak and all you hear is silence, your brain panics. You start thinking, did I say something wrong? Should I add more? Did they understand? That anxiety makes you want to keep going. But here's the truth. That pause you're afraid of? That's where the impact happens. That's where respect settles in. It's not your job to fill every second. It's your job to trust the power of your presence. So here's a practice that changed the game for me. Say your point and then stop. Just stop, even if it feels awkward. Even if no one responds right away. Even if your instinct is screaming. Say more. Resist it. Sit in it. Let it breathe. You'll be amazed at what happens. People will lean in. People will remember what you said. And more importantly, they'll feel it. Your goal isn't to be the loudest voice in the room. It's to be the clearest, the most grounded, the one who doesn't need 10 paragraphs to say something meaningful. Sometimes, the most impactful sentence is the one followed by silence. And if you're worried that stopping means you'll lose people's attention, I want you to flip the script. When you stop at the right moment, you don't lose attention, you heighten it. You leave people leaning forward, thinking, absorbing, reflecting. You give your words space to echo. So don't be afraid of the silence. Don't be afraid to end your sentence and let it stand. Don't rush to explain what doesn't need defending. You don't owe the world an essay every time you open your mouth. You owe it presence, purpose, clarity. Respect is not earned by how much you say. It's earned by how well you know when to stop. And when you master that, when you speak with enough trust in your words to let them stand alone, you don't just communicate. You command. So here we are. We've talked about why you need to stop apologizing for simply existing. Why setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Why the pause is your secret weapon. Why humor should come from confidence, not insecurity. Why gossip cheapens your voice. And why knowing when to stop talking might be the most powerful move you'll ever make in a room full of noise. But here's what ties it all together. Everything we've talked about is really about presence. Not performance, not perfection, not volume, just presence. The quiet, grounded kind that says, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. And I don't need to shout to be heard. Because in the end, people don't remember how many words you said. They remember how you made them feel. They remember the strength behind your silence. The clarity in your no. The steadiness in your voice when you didn't apologize for showing up fully as yourself. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you embody. And if you've made it this far, I want you to know this. You already have what it takes. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to hustle your way into being respected. You just need to return to who you were before the world told you to shrink. So speak less, but say more. Listen deeply. Stand tall. Take up space, not with ego, but with integrity. Let your voice rise from stillness, not from fear. And trust that when you show up with calm conviction, the right people will hear you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with your heart. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own quiet power. And if you'd like more grounded, honest conversations like this one, subscribe to the Chill Stoic. We're building something real here. One story, one truth, one pause at a time. Until next time, speak with purpose, live with power, and never forget, your presence is enough.